Sales were not good for DC Comics almost across the board in 2022. In fact, outside of Batman, most characters kind of withered and died on the vine. Flash doesn't sell, Wonder Woman doesn't sell, even Superman really isn't selling right now. It's Batman and a whole lot of nothing else. In fact, when I show you the numbers associated with DC Comics sales at the end of 2023, specifically December of 2023, and I do want to give a shout out to Comic Book Revolution, specifically Rock, I believe is his name. He compiles this list, puts them into categories, makes it very easy to go and analyze the sales numbers. This time we're doing for DC Comics only, and there are a lot of problem areas. They have a lot of work to do to fix their image and their sales issues going into this new year. Slow rolling out the Dawn of DCU, I think, is an enormous gamble that will not pay off because they're starting to see sales decreases on Batman as well. Now, they did have a few highlights at the end of the year. They had a crisis going on. They did have Batman Spawn, Greg Capullo and Todd McFarlane. Shocking, that one sold a lot of comic books. And we even have the Mark Silvestri Batman Joker team-up book that we've been waiting for a decade. Not surprisingly, all those are selling well. So they did get a bump, at least at the top of the sales charts. But once you look at everything else, including Batman, it starts to look a little murky. Speaking of Batman specifically, here's the chart of all the Batman and Batman-related comic book sales in December of 2023. And the thing that really, really jumps out to me is Detective Comics number 1067, sitting down there at number 50. This is a perennial top 20 selling comic book, and it is fronted by Bruce Wayne Batman, the go-to character for DC Comics. To see the sales on this title slipping like this has got to be concerning for DC Comics. They put Ram V on the series, and that was a bit of a gamble. Ram V is not a superhero comic book writer. I would say he's more of a genre writer, specifically horror. He is going with the horror opera theme in Detective Comics. He's brought in the Organ family, reassessing the relationship between the Wayne family and Gotham and how all these things kind of happen. But Ram V is notoriously a very slow writer. If he's got an ongoing, he tends to make things go out very slowly, kind of like Tom Taylor, but a better class of writer in my opinion. Ram V's Detective Comics is not going over well with Batman fans, and that is absolutely going to be a concern for DC Comics moving forward. Also, we've known this one, but down here outside the top 150, I Am Batman, a Batman-fronted comic book from Jace Fox, written by John Ridley. Problem being, Jace Fox is supposed to be the next Batman, the Batman that's actually supposed to replace Bruce Wayne within the DC Comics continuity and the universe. This is what DC Comics would like to happen. That's why they brought John Ridley on the book. Unfortunately, John Ridley is a terrible comic book writer. And you'll see in there on the sales charts, it's only 5 spots ahead of Batman 131. And you say, Wes, it actually outsold Batman. That's a good thing, right? Not really, considering that Batman 131 actually released in February, and I don't know how it sold anything in December of 2023. Somebody must have been selling this a little bit early. And that tells you that comic book wasn't even supposed to be out that month. And it still almost outsold I Am Batman. That's how bad that series is. It's absolute trash. He's got another series that's outside the top 200 that's Gotham related. I don't know what DC Comics were thinking bringing in John Ridley. They knew going into this he could not write comic books. He had written The Authority for Jim Lee and botched that years ago. But you get what you pay for. John Ridley sucks, and it's really hurting the reputation of the next Batman. The last title we'll talk about is Tim Drake Robin. Tim Drake fans been waiting for a decade now for the return of the character to the forefront of DC Comics to be something, anything of value within DC Comics. He felt like the Robin that everyone forgot. We saw more Stephanie Brown than Tim Drake. Unfortunately, they gave the character to Megan Fitzmartin. She then went and retroactively changed the sexuality of the character, and the series is all about him and Bernard being in a relationship. The art is absolutely terrible by Riley Rossmo. The characters are always walking around on twinkle toes. And the worst part about this is if you go and read Chip Zdarsky's Batman, and it's one of the best, if not the best-selling comic books in all of comic books, so most people probably have, we're actually getting some pretty damn good Tim Drake Robin right now. People should be talking about Tim Drake in Batman rather than Tim Drake in his own solo series, but the solo series is so bad. It's so offensive. It's so terrible. It ends up drowning out all the good stuff that Chip Zdarsky is doing with the character. Megan Fitzmartin is the worst writer in all of comic books. Vita Ayala is Alan Moore compared to Megan Fitzmartin. That's what I'm saying here. I'm not even being hyperbolic about that. DC Comics has a Batman problem on their hands. There's too much of the character. It's absolutely oversaturated. Not just with Batman, not just Batman team-up books, but with Batman-related characters. It's pretty much all that DC Comics are focusing on right now. Over half of their comic books released are Batman-related. Shockingly, we're starting to see less return on investment in the character. Detective Comics, a series that would typically be in the top 20 every single month, is almost about to fall out of the top 50. We have some supporting characters that people have been waiting to see. They're not even in the top 150. The next Batman, the one that's going to replace Bruce Wayne, he's not even in the top 150. DC Comics have got to pull back on all the Batman content before they destroy the character and just water him down completely. There's only so many Batman stories that you can tell concurrently before people get tired of the character, or maybe people that really love the character realize how much money they're being fleeced out of trying to keep up with all the Batman content. I'm going to get to the dead titles walking here in a minute, and there are Batman titles that aren't even in the top 200. Batman-related titles. Absolutely insane. The other thing that really stands out for DC Comics as poor besides that is the Justice League franchise. They only released 4 comic books associated with Justice League, and I think it's a stretch to say that Stargirl: The Last Children is a Justice League comic, but whatever. There's not a single Justice League comic book in the top 100 at all. I cannot believe that The Flash is not a top 25 selling comic book. It was perennially top 25 seller before Tom King did what he did in Heroes in Crisis and absolutely infuriated every single Flash fan at the exact same time in the entire world. I cannot believe that happened, and they are still trying to recover from that. I don't think that it was smart to take Barry Allen off the Flash title and put him into Justice League Incarnate to set up Dark Crisis. But whatever, that happened. Wally West is the star of the Flash right now. That's 2 or 3 generations of DC Comics readers' Flash, Wally West, and people still won't go and touch the book because of what Tom King did. The unfortunate thing is, Jeremy Adams is doing amazing work on that Flash series, and people still aren't reading it. It's just too bad. I'm surprised he's even getting 1 Minute War. He's getting a Flash event despite no sales being on Flash. It's like the Trial of the Amazons all over again, but certainly scaled down. You know, there's not as many comics associated with that, but you know, it's too bad that there's a good comic book out there and people aren't reading it. The other one that obviously stands out is John Stewart, The Emerald Knight #1. I understand that they paid for the artist, and they probably paid for the writer before they decided they didn't want to continue with Jeff Thorne's John Stewart series. But sometimes you have to take the L. The fans spoke. They hate what Jeff Thorne was doing. They don't like his take on Green Lantern, and they did not like the way that he destroyed the Green Lantern lore. We haven't seen a Green Lantern series in over 8 months at DC Comics. This is the first Green Lantern book that's come out that wasn't tied to an event, and it debuted outside the top 150. That is DC Comics fans telling Jim Lee and the rest of the brain trust over DC Comics to get your act together. The Justice League is absolutely in shambles right now. I think what Jason Aaron did with the Avengers is just atrocious. The sales have tanked. Anything associated with that mainline Avengers series absolutely sucks. But compared to what DC Comics have done with the Justice League and killing them off after giving them to Brian Michael Bendis, even though they knew that he couldn't sell a comic book to save his life, is somehow worse. And I don't mean just a little worse, like orders of magnitude worse. It's probably going to take them 2 or 3 years if they try really hard and find the right creator just to get Justice League back to where it can be a decent selling comic book again. They have done that much damage. I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about the dead titles walking. These are titles that are outside the top 100. Typically, you're talking about sales that are below like the 18,000 mark. And once you start getting to like that 200 mark, you're talking about sales that are, you know, below 12,000, maybe below 10,000. Sales numbers that any series released by DC or Marvel should never hit. They really shouldn't be below 18,000. But once you start getting outside like the top 150, you're like, you've really failed if you're a DC and a Marvel creator with their characters to get to a point like that. DC Comics had a lot of dead titles walking in December. In fact, they had 26 titles dead. This means 49%, nearly half of all new DC Comics titles in December were dead titles walking. The same number as November of 2022, 49%. This is not an aberration. This is the new norm. Half of the comic books that DC Comics publish, nobody really wants to read. In comparison, Marvel Comics had 21 dead titles walking which means 27% of new Marvel comics in December 2022 were also dead titles walking. 49% versus 27%. Do not tell me DC Comics don't have a problem. And look at this list. There's some stuff I want to talk about here as well. The Titans are really important, right? They're going to be replacing the Justice League. Tom Taylor's going to be writing that one. We got a Titans miniseries, Titans United Blood Pact, sitting in there at 149. That is bad news for DC Comics in the future of Titans. Obviously, it's going to sell better as a solo title, but it doesn't appear there's a lot of interest in Titans right now. Blue Beetle Graduation Day. There's about to be a Blue Beetle movie. You would expect there to be some interest in this character. Absolutely not. Outside the top 150. Monkey Prince, number 9 at number 179. Monkey Prince is one of the featured characters in Lazarus Planet. He's supposed to be one of the stars of that series. There is no interest in Gene Yang or Monkey Prince. Gene Yang seems like a very nice man. He's written some pretty decent comic books out there. He's not a draw. You can't put him on a new character no one's ever heard of and ever expect it to go anywhere. Nobody ever went into a comic book shop to buy a superhero comic book with Gene Yang's name on the title. Now let's look at the stuff outside the top 200. Young Justice targets number 6. Greg Weisman, I believe, is the producer of the Young Justice series on HBO Max. It sounds like the last season didn't go so well outside of Aaron Sparrow's episode that he wrote. A lot of people had issues with that, and it feels like that's transferred over to the comic books. There was no interest in the series. GCPD, The Blue Wall. John Ridley writing a Batman Gotham-related series. Shockingly, DC Comics fans could give two fucks less what John Ridley has to say about cops. Not surprised there. You could have told them, I could have told them. Yet they decided to release the comic book anyway. Batman titles. We have Nightwatch, that's a kid's title. The Audio Adventures, Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries. 3 Batman titles are outside the top 200. 2 of them are kids' titles. That also portends bad things for DC Comics and kids. They're releasing titles aimed at children. They are not buying them. Why are they putting the Audio Adventures into comic books? Who cares about their podcast? Nobody does. DC Mac, I don't even know why they've made that series. And obviously, Scooby-Doo is pulling up the rear because, he's Scooby-Doo. It's not really a superhero comic. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense for DC. So there's a lot of stuff going on that's bad for DC Comics right now, specifically with Batman and certainly with the Justice League. They've got a lot of work to do in 2023. Now, there were a couple of high notes, and I do want to end this video on some positive for DC Comics. There's 2 things that really stood out to me in December of 2022. First up, Action Comics 1050 at number 29. The title saw increased sales with the return of Kal-El's storyline, and obviously, Action Comics 1050 is a milestone, but Action Comics, the superior Superman title, somehow cracked the top 50. That is an enormous win for DC Comics. Hopefully, people will stick around. I don't think they will because I thought Action Comics 1050 sucked, but that's besides the point. At least people checked it out. Maybe they're ready to come back and read Superman again. They do have Superman number 1 releasing in the not-too-distant future with Josh Williamson. They decided to jettison Tom Taylor off the title. Smart move. Move John Kent to the back of line. Put Clark Kent back at the forefront as Superman. Action Comics 1151 came out this month, and I will say Leah Williams writing Power Girl is a problem that you're sticking in with that title. It's going to turn a lot of people off because that was a really bad story. But for at least 1 month, it looks like there is increased interest in Superman, and we know that is a point of emphasis for DC Comics moving forward is fixing Superman. As far as Wonder Woman, the ongoing series has been outside the top 100 for a really long time. It settled in at about 150. It has bounced back recently to number 71. That is shocking news because they're doing the Milk storyline. Wonder Woman is fighting Milk. I'm not even lying to you. The last time I saw something like this, it was actually because they did a lot of variant covers, specifically for Harley Quinn. I haven't looked into it, but I wouldn't be surprised if these past 2 issues of Wonder Woman had a lot of cool variant covers, and that's how they were able to juice the sales on it. Because Clue and Rad are absolutely awful, but at least they got people to actually buy the comic book. Hey, it looks like maybe there's some interest in some DC characters outside of Batman, and that's what they need to happen. Now, back in July of 2022, I talked about how DC comic sales had bottomed out and they were in really bad territory. Now, this isn't quite as bad as July of 2022, but these sales numbers from December of 2022 are really bad as well. Definitely check out what's happening in July compared to this. Really interesting stuff. The video's here or a link in the video description.